We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 5. It's the big show. Guys, I've been really missing you, believe it or not. Last week being on the road on a Sunday, you guys know at this point, like I love me some routine. So I'm excited to be back. This is my game day, right? I look forward to just like the morning of Sunday, just all the lead up to the show. Obviously, finally trying to put these pieces together from the entire week that we've been working through with all the guests. But this is one of those shows that I think is one of the more valuable things that I get to do for you guys out there. But also, I enjoy going through this process with you guys together. So on Sundays, we'll go through each position. Of course, we'll go through some games. We'll go through some lineups. We'll build some lineups. We'll talk through some stuff with our community, with our tier 1s, our tier 2s, our tier 3s. If you guys can't tell, I'm excited. This is going to be a really fun slate. I've heard some people talking about how this slate is a little bit gross in some ways. I kind of like it. Obviously, we don't have like those marquee teams that we're normally targeting. We got no Chiefs. We got no Ravens. We got no who else we got? We got no Falcons. We got it just seems like hang on. It guess it's hard to even like think through this because there's so many of the normal players that we don't have to choose from on the slate. But I kind of like that because that means that the ownership is condensing, right? And as a lot of us are probably playing mostly tournaments these days, when ownership is condensing on just a few plays, it's a great situation for us. So I like these type of slates, and we'll get into it. And I do think there's some ways that we can take advantage for sure. But how's everyone doing in the chat? My other favorite thing about Sundays is the chat is flying early. You guys are in here. You guys are in the weeds. You guys are building lineups. Obviously, the morning of, this is when we put it all together, right? So first name I saw this morning in the chat. I should start putting up the event even a little bit earlier, I think, because honestly, the chatter that goes on before the stream even starts for like hours is awesome. Wayne Casey, first name that I saw. Aaron's in here with the coffee emojis. Aaron has been throwing coffee emojis on. We got to shout out Aaron for a second. He's been throwing coffee emojis in the comments of every single video for like going on like 2 years now. So he's forever one of my heroes in the community. So what's up, Aaron? How's it going, man? Mikey Boy's in here, of course, always one of the first names. Joey Donnelly, what's up, man? He goes, enjoy your coffee. Let's get after it. I had to get a new Ember mug. This is my third one, actually. So no free ads, but I've had a couple issues, but it's working. Now I don't have to go warm it up every like 30 minutes or so. So that's good. I'm not sure what's going on with my eyes today. I think I've been staring at computers a little bit too much. I had to like literally put drops in my eyes like 4 times. So promise you guys, not under the influence of anything, but I'm not sure what's going on. Bernie Carlson here. He's got the Noti-Gang and We Are Back emojis going. Love it. Love it. Family Man. He's got the lock emoji around Derrick Henry and Kyla Murray. Looks like Family Man's going little stars and scrubs today. Good stuff, man. Good to see you. Gage Olson's in here. Third and Long. Love it, man. Third and Long says he hasn't made that switch over to FanDuel yet. Hey, man, it's not too late. It's not too late. I actually haven't even checked on the Listener League yet once today. So I'm going to do that quickly because we have the technology for this. So hang on. It looks like it's at about 15. This is a dummy lineup in here. It might be Jake's lineup, actually, because he's got to send me a late swap because he still has Kittle on it. Let's see what we got here. About 1,500. So we are 77% full at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So let's fill this thing up, guys. I'm working towards getting us a single entry contest as well. Hopefully next week, but we'll see. And for them to kind of do more for us at FanDuel, we got to do our part to fill this thing up. So FanDuel.com/Holka. You guys know the drill at this point. Awesome to kind of go through this with you guys. Obviously, we're going to wait for some people to kind of trickle in here. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about just from a macro perspective, you guys know that I love my routine on Sundays. But one thing that I think is extremely valuable that I'm prioritizing in the mornings is that I take a little bit of time to decompress, to kind of clear the mechanism a little bit. And one of the ways that I do this, and there's a ton of different things you can do. So basically, I know everyone wants to kind of rip me for warming up my coffee right before the streams, but I've actually pivoted a little bit. So about an hour before the stream, I'll go in the sauna, no podcast, no nothing, just hang out there in my thoughts. At that point, all the research is done, and kind of hang out in there. And then I actually go jump in. We have a lap pool in our building, super cold. So I go from like two extremes. I go from like the super hot sauna and then I go into the lap pool. And trust me, almost every single time I'm about to jump in the water, I just think it's a horrible idea. I'm like, I can just go upstairs, take a nice hot shower, get ready for the stream. But I think there's a ton of value in getting uncomfortable, but also like it's not even a half second, it's a millisecond. As soon as I hit that water, it's like the coolest feeling of my entire morning. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if it's like just going from that extreme heat to the extreme cold, but just like my brain it's like a reset for me, right? So it doesn't have to be that. Like what I'm saying, like find something that you enjoy doing on Sunday mornings, whether it's you go work out, you go for a walk, you go for a swim, something, right? Take the dogs for a walk. Do something to get away from your screens. Do something to get away from your phone, because you can stare at these players and these lineups for hours and end up tinkering yourself into just like overthinking certain things, right? So it's always been a part of my process to figure out ways to kind of relax a little bit on Sundays. Like I actually like ramp the caffeine down a little bit on Sundays because I get a little bit too excited and then a little bit jittery. You want to be clear in your thoughts. That's why it's like really important to like, it sounds insane, but not insane, but get a really good night's sleep on Saturdays. Like I am like the biggest old man ever on Saturdays now. It helps that my girlfriend's up super early on Sundays as well. So like I'm in bed 9:30, 10 on Sundays because I want to be like at my freshest point on Sunday mornings for these decisions, right? So anyways, I hope that's valuable for you guys. I would imagine that you guys figure like there's a lot of different things you can do, right? But that's something that I love doing. I love doing it. Nice little shock of the system. Yeah. What's up, Cody? How's it going, my man? Flash is in here. Sauna and lap pool. Oh, yeah, man. I'm a big sauna guy now. It's crazy. A Bizzle's in here. What's up, A Bizzle? Bryce Herman, Justin. We got a lot of Justin Jefferson love already. I'll be at the Vikings game today against Detroit. Not the most exciting matchup by any means, but it's a good game for fantasy, we hope. In terms of news, guys, and then we'll start things off like we always do with the poll. But in terms of news, wasn't anything too crazy. It does look like that Chase Edmonds is expected to play, which it wasn't looking like it for a while, right? He was doubtful. So that's interesting. Looks like DeAndre Swift expected to play as well. He's still battling that groin injury. We'll talk through that Vikings game extensively. Same thing with Curtis Samuel. I think that was just kind of a rest that they're giving him for that groin. He's an interesting one. Very cheap price tag on him. We'll get there. Antonio Gibson expected to play. A lot of these guys expected to play. Tony Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson, knee expected to play. So kind of an interesting spot. There's a lot of guys coming off of injury, not necessarily guys that we know are banged up that are battling through something. So like I think there's a big difference there. We're talking through these guys that haven't been in the lineup for a little while. Someone like Joe Mixon comes to mind. He's been kind of week to week. So maybe he comes in and he's not 100%. That's something that could happen. But it's also, a lot of times these teams, like, what's the reason for bringing someone back too early, right? A lot of times they are ready to go. So coming off of an injury, different than battling through an injury, at least in my opinion. I think that's the major ones. Obviously, Kittle will not be on the slate. We talked about him a little bit earlier in the week. So that's an interesting spot now to where the target share is condensed a little bit in San Francisco for Trey Lance. So Debo's price tag in the beginning of the week looked like it was a little aggressive. Now maybe not. We'll get there. We'll talk through some game environment stuff, but I want to do a quick poll as we get some people to walk through here. Clear thoughts, clutter dump. Yeah, that's probably a big part of most people's pregame routine in any sport, right? Justin Bailey in the chat. How do you like the Whoop band? JB, what's up, man? First off, number two, I love the Whoop. I used to be like just an Apple Watch person. I got like my phone going off constantly throughout the day. Anyway, the last thing I need is my wrist going off too. You know what I mean? So the Whoop's awesome. That's kind of how, not to get too in the weeds, but how I figure out how much to sleep. Honestly, it tells you like your optimal amount of rest that you need to be kind of working at full capacity. So I love the Whoop, man. No free ads, but I love the Whoop. Let's do a poll here. So the first thing that I like to do, if you guys are here for the first time, would love it if you would consider subscribing to the channel. But the first thing that we really like to do here, let's get an idea of who's going to be the highest owned player on the slate. Week 5, who's the highest owned player? Devonte Adams, Derrick Henry, Leonard Fournette, CeeDee Lamb, Damien Williams, or other. This is a sub-only vote, so subscribe to the channel. If you do, exclamation point vote, space the number in the chat in order to place your vote. So if you're going to vote for Derrick Henry, exclamation point vote, space 2. Who's going to be the highest owned player today? As we're talking through leverage, as we're talking through lineup construction, all that stuff, like this is always a really good place to start. Ryan Hodge, $5 super chat. What's up, man? Let's smash today. Look good, feel good, play good. Love it, man. Good luck today, Hodge. We got to figure out a way for you to get a lineup in like the guest league thing that we're doing. It sucks because Hodge is obviously on Mondays, so building a lineup on Monday that's actually just going to go right into this GPP would be pretty tough spot for me to put Hodge in. Love it though, man. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you. I saw that tweet you had by you're going through your quarterback review and your computer gets like shut off. Dude, I vibe with that stuff so hard. That sucks. Like there's nothing worse than like getting like halfway through a video or halfway through like a video edit and just losing everything. Just the worst. Just the worst. We're a little bit spread out on ownership right now, which is interesting. So personally, I think at the high stakes, or even just like the smaller field stuff that a lot of us are playing in our community, I think Devonte Adams is going to be heavily owned. So not to bury the lead, we had a slate like this last year where we had a chalk Devonte Adams. I really struggle with these really expensive chalk wide receivers anyway, which you guys know by this point. But it gets to the point where if you have a direct pivot on the team that is a little bit lower owned, like the Aaron Jones week last week, I mean, I don't know. Or last year. Does it happen again? I think Aaron Jones scores 3 touchdowns with a chalk Devonte Adams, won us all the money. The screenshots, that might be the 1 week since I started doing this that we had more screenshots in the Discord than I've ever seen. So that'd be cool if we did that again. Cody says that the poll is very spread. Yeah, I know, man. Does that make you guys nervous that it's spread? Someone says AJ Brown. Yeah, AJ Brown is like that. He was that guy that everyone thought was like super sneaky at the beginning of the week, and now he's just not sneaky at all. Yeah, I expect him to be heavily owned, actually. We'll get into that. What else have I missed here in the chat? Jay Mitchell. What's up, Jay Mitchell? Jay Mitchell's been fighting the trolls for me in the comments. I see you, my man. Appreciate you. Brandon Kramer's in here. Rob F. Lundar. I love seeing the familiar faces, guys. Seriously. I know I say it a lot, but it means a lot you guys being here. Family Man. David Wayne. David Wayne says Crowder 7 to 8 targets by half. Maybe. T. Higgins resuming that alpha role. Maybe. I love the takes, guys. Keep them coming. Clear the mechanism for the love of the game reference. Is that what that's from? It's not that I thought I made that up. I just never really knew where I heard that from. That's awesome, actually. Heggy, what's up, man? We got a bunch of tier 1, tier 2 members in here, so I appreciate you guys as well. Tier 3s, by the way, if you missed it in chat, make sure you guys post some initial lineups today in the priority chat, because I want to go over them on stream. That's something I want to do a little bit more of for the tier 3s. Someone said, will you be returning to Tiltspace today? You better believe it, my man. I will be at the Vikings game, coming back just in time for the Tiltspace. I've been on the Tiltspace for 2 weeks. It seems like a year, literally. So I'll have a couple beers in me, I'm sure, from the game, but it's going to be a good time. Hopefully we're sweating. Sweating, not tilting on the Tiltspace. That's the idea. 6 p.m. Eastern time on the Established Run channel, if you guys haven't seen that one. Myself, Peter Overzet, Michael Leone, going through our high-stakes teams. Weeva, we got a new tier 1 Holkamaniac. What's up, my man? See you in the Discord. Appreciate you. Welcome. Let's see what we got here on the poll. Derrick Henry and Devonte Adams neck and neck, but still a lot of Fournette love here. Not a lot of CeeDee Lamb love, which is interesting. Maybe, I mean, we understand that CeeDee Lamb's going to be chalky. Maybe we just also understand that he's not going to be the chalkiest, right? Very interesting. How do I get in the Joe Holka League on FanDuel? I can't find it. It is not in the lobby, my friend. You literally have to go to fanduel.com/Holka to get in there. Super easy. So you guys keep me posted on news this morning. Sometimes we miss some stuff as we're live, so definitely let me know if anything happens in the chat. I'm actually really curious what's going on with Dalvin, if Dalvin's going to play or not. I know he's questionable. I'm hoping we get more info on that, though. So let's go ahead and end this poll. And we'll talk through a few things game environment wise, and we'll move into quarterback. So one of the things that at this point of the week, we kind of know the games, right? We know the games that we're going to be focusing on. We know the team totals, all that stuff. So what's interesting to me, at least, is we have some teams at the top that, or some games, I guess, that are going to be super popular. We know the Giants and the Cowboys. That's going to be one of the higher paced games on the slate. We know San Francisco and Arizona. People are just falling over themselves to play Trey Lance, right? Did we learn anything from Justin Fields in his first real start against Cleveland? Is my biggest question of the entire day. I'm not sure if it's the same situation, but let's give the Card. This is not a homer thing. Let's give the Cardinals a little bit of props here. Their defenses look very good. It has. So does that mean that we just see a little bit more running from Trey Lance because he's scrambling a little bit? Maybe. But let's not forget that he did not look good at times last week. But some of these guys that have the floor with the rushing ability that he has, sometimes it doesn't matter. So we'll talk a little bit more about that game. I actually think that Philly and Carolina is interesting from a pace perspective, so we'll talk through that. Some of the slower pace games that we'll see still as be some of the higher total games that we should at least be aware of. We talked about Devonte Adams. How does it go wrong for him? Maybe this Green Bay and Cincinnati game just gets kind of gross. It's possible, for sure. We got Tennessee-Jacksonville that I think could be a little bit slower pace as well, even though I think that the big dog's squarely in play. Now the big dog's catching passes, by the way. How great is that? That's amazing, right? So we'll talk through that. Denver at Pittsburgh, I think, is going to be one of the slower pace games as well, but not a lot of chalk in that game. Some of the higher team totals, it's interesting to see the Vikings as like the highest team total on the slate, but not getting as much steam from an ownership perspective yet, at least. Tampa Bay, high team total. Everyone thinks it's going to be a blowout. Maybe. It's possible for sure. And then we got Arizona, Tennessee, Green Bay, those guys. So it's kind of interesting that we have those teams at the top, yet the ownership is still condensing on players and not necessarily teams outside of maybe Giants and Cowboys. So that's kind of interesting. A-Biz will love pass catching Derrick Henry. Me too, my man. That KC helmet in the back. You talking about this Matt White one? Matt White is, I still haven't even looked it up. I don't know if Matt White is a thing. But yeah, guys, we got the Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We got the red Sharpie. We got that. We got the TJ Hawkinson helmet behind us. Both of those came out of the mystery box this week from Pristine Auctions. So check out the link in the description below if you guys want into the drawing for that. Also the Deebo Samuel jersey right behind me. Awesome, like probably the best mystery box we've ever had this week. So there's a video if you want to check out the unboxing. Do those every Monday on stream, but going to be giving away those items to people that jump in there. So link in the description. Takes 2 seconds. Totally free to enter. Still have a pretty good chance of getting in there as well. Pearl White. I actually like that better, FA. Going Lance just gets you so much with the rest of your lineup. That's the thing, Justin. The pricing is like relatively tight, right? Because some of the value that we normally have, maybe a little bit shakier. So if you want to pay down like at a week where we don't have Travis Kelce at tight end, where we don't have Travis Kittle, where we don't have George Kittle at tight end, maybe you pay all the way down to tight end and you pay down a quarterback and then you just jam in all these wide receivers and running backs that you want. It's a viable strategy, and it's a strategy I think a lot of people are going to do. Trey Lance is a way to get there. Hey, Bizzle, you're the memorabilia champ. Room goals. I mean, for the record, Pristine Auction is the memorabilia champ. So hang on. I'll show you guys what we got here. They sent me a flag. I got these bobbleheads. Look how cool this is. And I'm going to flex the zoom because this is fun to do. And this is all about me, guys. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. How could we forget the... Hang on. How could we forget the Baker Mayfield bobblehead here? This is something else we're giving away. Look at this thing. Look at that. Baker, I know he's been banged up, but we need Baker to be better today. The OBJ shares would appreciate it. New face, but I'm tired of losing in tourney and cash. Hey, man. I would say if you're struggling so far this year, definitely focus in on your game selection first. Play some smaller field tournaments. Get different. It's the name of the game. Madison can save us from Chalk Lenny. Wasn't it the Madison play that we always talk about where Madison failed? Wasn't it against Detroit? It was a division game. My only I like the Minnesota Detroit game a decent amount, but there are always concerns that game is going to turn gross, right? Like Minnesota is not scared to win 13-7. So we'll get there. Let's do a quarterback poll here. We'll move into the positions. I'm talking too much today, so let's get into it a little bit. we talked a little bit about Trey Lance, but top quarterback, price considered. This is a sub-only vote, so subscribe to the channel. Once you subscribe to the channel, if you want to vote for Trey Lance, exclamation point vote space 1. Where are we at on quarterback, guys? Best price considered play. Is Kyla Murray so far ahead that he's worth a price tag? Maybe. We have a couple mid-range guys that I think are in play as well. Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow. Where are we at right now on quarterback? You guys know I spilled my entire coffee this week on Tuesday all over my desk. It was like instant panic. Somehow not on the carpet, but there's like a lot of stuff. I'm going to have to get like a camera or a picture at some point and post it on Twitter. Like my desk is an absolute disaster with like this being a one-man show. Like I honestly don't even care at this point that you guys are going to see a remote just for the zoom outs because it's fun. But there's a lot of different buttons here. We got obviously the keyboard. We got a Go XLR for the audio. We got the Stream Deck for switching scenes. Like we can go over here quickly. We can come back over the polls. Like it's all me back here, guys. I kind of enjoy doing that though. But coffee on the desk, disaster. So yeah, guys, if you are voting for other, we had a couple people mention that already in the chat. You do have to place your vote first, and then on the next line, tell me who you're on. So Edward Pulse, just so you know, my man, you have to do exclamation point vote space and the number, or it will not work. It's very touchy, these polls. Interesting that you're on Darnold, though. It's kind of sneaky. I don't hate it. Same thing with you hustling. If you're going to vote for Jalen Hurts, you got to do exclamation point vote 6 first. Decent amount of others, though, so far, which is interesting. And we did just cross over 100 likes, so appreciate you guys. The number one way for more people to find this show on Sundays is for you guys to like these videos. Takes 2 seconds. Does really help us out, though. Will I be including some cash picks? Mandy, we're going to talk through the best plays. Don't you worry. If you're playing cash games, you're going to have a very good idea of what the optimal plays are. We like to get a little bit more in the weeds with some tournament exposure on this show. We like to talk through some guys that we could leverage that chalk with, but indirectly, we will talk about some cash plays, my man. Don't you worry. Will Kyle Pitts get his first TD today? Did that game start already? It starts soon, right? I haven't spent 1 minute looking at that game yet, but yeah, that could happen. Obviously, it would happen not on the main slate. Of course. Same thing, Kyle. If you want to vote for Brady, you got to do exclamation point vote 6, hit enter, and then hit Brady. Very touchy, these polls, but I like doing it. It's fun to show it on the screen. There's ways we can do it in the chat, but then it doesn't show on screen, so it's just not, doesn't hit right, for me at least. 5 minutes until the game. What's up, Vincent? How we doing, my man? The answers in here. Wow. Have we seen a quarterback slate where we're this spread out? Daniel Jones actually leading the way, though, which is kind of interesting. But let's start at the top, guys. So Kyla Murray. Like one of the things that, I guess, to his detriment, Kyler's been so efficient throwing the football and actually pushing the ball downfield a little bit more that he hasn't actually been running quite as much as he had kind of in the past. Like, does that matter? No, not necessarily. I still think on a slate like this, he's still like far and away the top raw points option. But it is interesting, at least, that, we don't have him over 40 yards on the ground in any game this year. The attempts are kind of there, and he's still getting in the box. I think he's got 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. But something to keep in mind, if he doesn't continue to throw for like 300 yards in some of these games, that it's a tough price tag on a slate like this where it's not as easy to get to it. That's my only point. But on FanDuel specifically, guys, you don't gain a lot by moving down to someone like Daniel Jones. You're going to gain $1,100, and maybe that matters. But honestly, like the tier difference between Kyler at the top versus like just saving $900 in salary for some of these other guys, I think at that point you do kind of want to get up to that next tier because he does separate a little bit at the top. Does that make sense? So the other problem with guys like Kyler is that I prefer to play these rushing quarterbacks with one weapon. Just really key in on a skinny stack because then if they do a lot on the ground and we hit on our stack, someone like DeAndre Hopkins, then we're in good shape. The problem is in Arizona, this this air raid that they've got going, this horizontal raid that we called it at times last year, they've been spreading the ball around a lot. So it does make me a little bit nervous, right, on stacking this up, because in theory, yeah, you mix in some of these other weapons around Kyler, but I don't know if the ceiling is there for like just one of these weapons to get there, and that's what I prefer to do with a skinny stack with a guy like that. So I do like Kyler a lot. Good spot for him, obviously, against San Francisco. We're hoping that we can get Trey Lance on the other side playing well. But there's a scenario where this Arizona defense just runs Trey Lance out of the building. You know what I mean? So let's talk about Trey Lance since we're here. Not like the easiest spot by any means. We already talked about it. I'm not sure it's the exact same as Fields and Cleveland, but there's outs here where Trey Lance doesn't have this smash performance, and the ownership is getting a little bit crazy on Trey Lance in particular. Let's see where it landed here. We haven't even talked about Run the Sims yet. So Run the Sims, guys. runthesims.com/Holka. It'll get you access to 10,000 simulations of every game. It's our official tools partner this year. 10% off with promo code Holka if you're tier 2 or tier 3 member. You get 20% off. So one of the things that I'm focused on here is we'll go through the simulations, but I'm curious what the ownership looks like here at quarterback. I'm curious what Trey Lance ended at, basically. So it looks like he's at about 11%. Smaller field, I think he'll be much higher than that. So maybe it's a little bit flatter than I'm getting myself. I'm getting a little bit worked up for nothing. We got Dak, we got Kyler. Kyler at 15%. It is on FanDuel easier to get up to that top tier, like I said. The drop-off isn't as significant price-wise. Tom Brady at 8,400. That's kind of interesting. Price right next to Kyla Murray. Tom Brady coming off of a no touchdown pass game. I mean, would anyone be shocked if Tom Brady came out there and just absolutely smashed today against Miami? The problem is, what's the pushback going to be on the other side? But if we're just talking ownership as a whole, guys, what is a way that we can kind of leverage this Leonard Fournette ownership approaching 20%? In small field, higher stakes, probably maybe even higher than that. Maybe it is playing Tom Brady for a little bit of a more expensive price tag. We got Frost in the chat. $5 super chat. Hey, brother, congrats on your 15K subscribers. Let's get those likes up. Let's go. Hey, man, I appreciate you. Frost is one of our tier 3s. We're going to go over your lineup here shortly, my man. So, yeah, if any tier 3s are kind of trickling in here, I want to get an idea of where your early builds are on Sunday, and we'll touch on some stuff here. I do want to start doing that a little bit more on these shows. But thanks so much, Frost. Appreciate you, my man. So in terms of Trey Lance, obviously having George Kittle would have made me feel a little bit better about this play. The problem is, I guess, what we just saw is just in a half of action last week, like what he does with his legs. Like, it might not even matter at that price tag. 6,900. Like, you can get in Derrick Henry. You can get in Devonte Adams. You can get in so much if you're willing to play Trey Lance in this spot. Just know, like, it's not the best spot in the world for him to make his official debut. So I think it's interesting to at least see the path to where Daniel Jones outscores Trey Lance. Now on FanDuel, Daniel Jones is a decent amount more expensive, right? So Daniel Jones, 7,400. You got to pay $500 more to get to Daniel Jones. But obviously missing some weapons. Kadarius Toney is going to be a popular kind of pay down wide receiver play. We have Evan Ingram, who, like, what happened to Evan Ingram, guys? Like, has all the tools in the world, just literally has hands like feet, can't catch the ball at times. But he's extremely cheap. So easy stacking options with Daniel Jones. Obviously, Kenny Golladay is in the mix. Kenny Golladay, I think, is actually kind of a sneaky wide receiver play in that game, but we'll talk about that. I think the Dallas side is going to be probably more popular as one-offs than the Giants guys. I think if you have the Giants guys, they're probably in Daniel Jones stacks because of how popular he's going to be. So I don't worry too much at quarterback ownership, but the Trey Lance versus Daniel Jones decision today is not the easiest, for sure. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of work through the slate. You like that one, Frost? Hands like feet? That's actually a hockey term. Hands like feet. Guys are just beating the puck up because their hands aren't soft. Love it. I just think that's a really funny quote. I'm going to use that all the time. Doozy, Antonio Brown rocket emoji. Man, Antonio Brown literally dropped a touchdown pass about 25 feet from me last week. Like, literally, that touchdown pass would have swung my entire week. So I'm still tilting Antonio Brown, but I could see it, man. Evans kind of sneaky in that game as well. I mean, the passing game's kind of sneaky, if we're being honest, because Brady is so expensive. I mean, they do have the third highest team total on the slate, right? So we'll talk about that. Outside of those guys, let's talk. We're just talking about Danny Dimes. On the other side, Dak Prescott. I love that game. Obviously, like everyone, I love that game. And one of the best things about that game, to me at least, is that it's in the afternoon. That's what's nice about both these. So it's good and bad because we have Giants, Cowboys, we have 49ers, Cardinals in the afternoon. It's nice to have the chalk second, in my opinion, because then we can figure out ways to get different at 1 p.m. And then if things go really well, then maybe we move to, or maybe we stay on one of these chalk stacks. If things are going terribly, maybe it's an easy pivot over to Justin Fields, or an easy pivot over to someone like Justin Herbert at 4 p.m. So like there are some decent leverage opportunities in the 4 p.m. slate, which I really like. And we'll get to that as we move through this as well. But wanted to mention that quickly. We got, I think that says Elephant Man. What's up, man? He's been lurking all week. Loves the channel. Thank you for the super chat, my man. $4.99. It's very generous of you. Seriously, thank you so much. Guys, just being here is more than enough, but I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Tannehill going to be quietly good today, I think. Mikey boy, I think that's kind of sharp. I'm always kind of a proponent too, and we've talked about this before. Not many people are going to play Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Ryan Tannehill together. Because like the casual person that's building lineups, it doesn't feel right to put Derrick Henry on those teams. But go back and look at it. Don't take my word for it. You can go back and look at Derrick Henry and his explosion games. Number one, it happens when we don't expect it. Number two, it happens in these really high-scoring games because the pace just like increases. So in a Tennessee, I guess in a matchup against Jacksonville, where we don't think the pace is going to be extremely high, at least I don't mind the idea of getting different with your Derrick Henry shares with Tannehill and A.J. Brown. Easy bringbacks on the other side with Jacksonville, Laviska Shenault. I kind of like that. I'm not saying I'm going to build one of those for sure, but I do like it. I think it's at least interesting. Can we use this spreadsheet? We talking Run the Sims, my man? Oh, yeah. runthesims.com/Holka. You can use this spreadsheet. It is not free, unfortunately, like the old spreadsheet. It just made more sense to partner with someone that actually would provide you guys with a little bit more value versus just metrics. Because one of the things that I think is really cool about this, and let's just show it, is we can simulate the entire slate. 10,000 times we can simulate this thing. Extremely, it's like there's nothing like this. There's optimizers out there, but there's nothing like Run the Sims in that way. So we can see how often these players and their ownership are popping in the optimal lineup for the entire slate. So interesting to see, yeah, Devonte Adams at pretty close to the top, 22.8% optimal, but right there at ownership. Alvin Kamara on FanDuel at 8,600, I do think will be relatively popular. We'll talk about running back shortly. 28% in the optimal. Quarterback, though, we gotta look down a little bit here, right? Kyla Murray, 10% of the optimals. So what you want to look for here is when people, and this is a great way to see if someone might be underowned, by the way. So what is the chance that Kyler Murray is in the optimal? Maybe it's higher than 10%, but if it's close to that, it's basically what his ownership is. What you want to find is these guys that are projecting the optimal much higher than where they're projected ownership-wise. So we see guys like Aaron Jones here, 16.9% of the optimal lineups when this slate is simulated 10,000 times have Aaron Jones in it, but he's only projected to be owned at about 11%. So when we look at that and compare it to Devonte Adams, where it's basically even with the field, there's leverage here, right? So I love looking at this. To some extent, we see it with some of these even mid-range guys like DeAndre Swift. So I think that if you're stacking up Minnesota or doing mini stacks, DeAndre Swift, easy bring back. Easy bring back. So that's kind of how I'm deciding how I want to do some of these as well, is what guys are popping here based on just the math and which guys are going under-owned as a result. Does that make sense? Another super chat. Cameron Brate leverage off of Fournette and run Lance naked. Anthony, that's super sharp, man. Thank you so much for that $10 super chat. Who was it that mentioned Cameron Brate? I think it was Jake Seeley, actually, earlier in the week. Family man just signed up for Run the Sims. My guy. I think you're going to love it, man. Let me know if you have any questions about the tools. I'll try and show them as much as I can on stream as well. Thoughts on Madison today? Do we have any confirmation on Dalvin Cook yet? Keep an eye on that from you guys. Seriously. That type of news is super valuable, obviously, Sunday morning, I think, as things trickle in. So let's talk about a few more quarterbacks, and then we'll get into the running back position. I think that if you really wanted to kind of get a little bit different, like where's the leverage? I like on this slate specifically leaving my quarterback for the 4 p.m. slate, but if you're dead against doing that, let's take a look here at what some of the leverage might be. And obviously at the quarterback position, it's a little bit flatter, but this can kind of give us an idea of stacks as well. So at 1 p.m., it does feel like Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, because like let's think about this for a second. Devonte Adams is going to be absolutely piled on, right? But how many people are going to be stacking up Green Bay? Much smaller number. Much smaller number. So Aaron Rodgers stacks with Adams, maybe with Aaron Jones as well. I think that's at least entertaining from a contrarian perspective. Very interesting. So Kirk Cousins, I think, leads. Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, those are the other guys I think that probably project as like a decent amount of leverage. But let's do this, guys, because we haven't built a lineup yet. Let's see what a Cousins stack looks like. I'm going to be at the game, so I'm selfishly gonna build a Cousins stack here, see what it looks like, since it is one of the more leveraged spots in the morning. So if we go Cousins, we probably want to double him. I think Justin Jefferson is an easy guy to play here. Let's just say for the sake of this lineup that that Cook is active and we expect some sort of split between Madison, and maybe Madison isn't quite as much in play. We can bring it back with Swift. We can bring it back with Hawkinson. You guys know that I like to figure out a way to get rid of the tight end position just through correlation. So then the question comes, to me at least, do we want to pay down all the way down for someone like KJ Osborne? Do we want to pay down for a tight end like Conklin and then play Swift on the other side? Or do we want to just play like the premium Kirk Cousins double with Thielen? Let's see what it looks like if we do Thielen first, just because obviously the touchdowns are so important on FanDuel that it is nice to have the touchdown equity from those two guys. And let's bring it back with Hawk, because I think that if everyone's going to be paying up, probably obviously it's just Darren Waller is in an amazing spot, but Hawkinson banged up, I get it. This is an interesting way to start, I think, on this slate. Now, if we're talking defenses, because I like to have at least like some sort of placeholder in there, right? Just to have like something in the lineup so that I can kind of build. So let's just say that we're going to pay down for Philly because they're 3,500. So then we still have 6,700 the rest of the way. So the decision point here is this stack contrarian enough to where we could eat the big dog chalk at 1 p.m.? That's a lot of 1 p.m. exposure, though. So let's think through what we would want. Let's get at least one mini stack in the afternoon that we really like. So whether it's someone like CD Lamb, Kadarius Toney, super chalky, though. You can always pivot off of the chalk, though. That's the thing. So is there a running back that we really like in the afternoon that we could play? Is there a contrarian running back at 1 p.m.? Those are the questions I have. I looked at Justin Jefferson's target inside the 20 versus Thielen so far this year. Yeah, I mean, that's what's crazy, my man, is there's so much touchdown upside, I think, with these like really condensed offenses, and especially like if we're going to play that this game shoots out, which we are, I would be shocked if Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen aren't a big part of it, right? Like who matches up against those guys, against Detroit, or with Detroit on the other side? Not many people very well, right? We got to find at least one salary saving option that we like probably at 1 p.m. So I don't necessarily want to kind of eat the Fournette chalk with this one, but who's another guy that we like at 1 p.m. at the running back position that's a little bit cheaper? We could just go Damien at 4 p.m., which I don't hate. Let's throw Damien in there because then we can always pivot off of that chalk later. I don't know if we need a Vegas guy on the other side of that. So 7,100, we might be able to get big dog in this one. 5,400 the rest of the way. Probably can't play CD. Nope, can't play CD. So we need something significantly cheaper at wide receiver now. And I want to have it be a piece of one of the high flying games because we can always get away from it. So what if we went with Toney? 5,300. We got 5,600 left in the flex. It's kind of a weird range. It's definitely the punt range, obviously. So we go Darnell Mooney on the same team with Damien, not bringing it back with anything on the other side of that. We could go a little bit different with Samaje Perine. It does get pretty gross down here, though, obviously. Jalen Waddle is one that I think is interesting as a one-off. It's kind of interesting. So I would say, and we're not just going to build out these teams fully, obviously, because I don't want you guys blindly playing these. What you could do is add to your correlation with KJ Osborne, which I don't hate, especially if Cousins. Like, how does Cousins get there? There's no rushing equity. Maybe Cousins gets there because he throws for 300. One of those goes to KJ Osborne. Justin Jefferson has 140 yards but no touchdowns. Thielen gets in the box. That's how it works, right? So then at that point, maybe you upgrade defense. So that's kind of how I think through those. I want to do more of those. AJ Brown, that would have worked. Ayuk. There's a lot of good. See, like when you get down there, I always talk about this on the first look. I fall in love with so many wide receivers in between like the 5,500 to like the 6,300 range on FanDuel every week that it's almost really hard to sacrifice some of those positions with your stack just because there's so many decent one-offs, decent mini stacks that you can do with those teams, right? So it's definitely interesting. Let's move on from quarterback, go guys, and let's talk through the running back position. So let's do another poll. Who's the top running back on the slate? Price considered. Is this poll going to show up? Don't do it to me, Streamlabs. Let's close the poll. Let's try it again. There it is. Oh. I don't like this. We're going to cancel this poll. There we go. Whew. What is going on with these? It's been buggy lately. There was another day where Streamlabs, like, it just completely didn't work. It was on their side, and then I did nothing to change it. Before the other stream, I was going in like, okay, how do I fix these? And then it worked somehow. So I guess we're back. All right, top running back play. Sub-only vote. So if you're just lurking in here, I know, like, I can literally see on the back end, guys, that about half of you guys are just watching these streams and you're not subscribed. Do me a solid, subscribe. Toss a like on this video. More people will find the stream, and then our community becomes even more fun. We can get a better idea of where we're at as a group on some of these polls. So exclamation point vote, space the number to place your vote. Who's the top running back on the slate? Week 5. What's up, Justin? We got Justin in here. Nate Frog's in here. King's in here now. Ian Warner Comedy. What's up, guys? How we doing? Someone likes Josh Jacobs. A lot of leverage there. Aaron Jones. If Madison starts, but right now James Robinson. There are some cheaper options. I don't love the running backs in terms of value on this slate as much as I did on the last one, though. Kings on Zeke. Yeah, like how does this CD Lamb and Dak chalk like go bad? Maybe it's Zeke. I could see it for sure. I mean, if they continue to be as run heavy as they were last week, I could see it for sure. Hey, sports fan, says Chubb season. Chubb's price is getting to a spot where I'm a lot more willing to entertain that outside of just like like Chubb is like always the easiest late swap on the board. And that might not change today at 4 p.m. Fade Cowboys Giants. The thing that's nice about Cowboys and Giants is at 4 p.m. So like you can just have like a contrarian team early and stay on Cowboys Giants. There's no issues there. Daniel Blaze, thank you for subscribing, my man. Welcome in. Anthony is a new member. I'm sorry I missed that, my man. Welcome to the community. We got Vic in here as a new subscriber. What's up, man? Pitts is looking good. Come on. Pitts is looking good right now. Are you guys watching this game? This is like just standard, right? Like just be all over Pitts for weeks and then him just go crazy on basically not the main slate. Happens every year. A Bizzle says we got 16-16 in the listener league. Let's fill that thing, guys. We haven't filled it yet. 2,000 people. FanDuel.com/Holka. It's completely rake free. Flat payout structure. 2,000 to first place is 3 entry max. All the entries from my account will be from the guests that we obviously build on the stream on Thursdays. Get in there, guys. Anthony says, been following you since Twitch playing video games. Awesome, man. Yeah, I used to play a little bit of first-person shooter, some Valorant on stream. I'm just not the best at video games, and I just am not willing to put in the time to get better, and I don't like not being good at things. So focusing on some other stuff, but I do enjoy a Valorant session now and then. A lot of others here. So it's basically Derrick Henry. No one's eating the chalk with Damien Williams and Leonard Fournette. No one likes Najee Harris. You guys understand that Big Ben like doesn't throw the ball downfield at all anymore, right? All he does is check it down. So these like massive like target games for Najee Harris, like that's going to be a normal thing. I feel like all year. The efficiency, he gives me Leonard Fournette, Jacksonville vibes because the efficiency is not going to be there very often from him, but the volume is almost always going to be there. Rather play Jones or Adams today? I mean, Adams is a fantastic play, Alonzo. Like, there's no doubt about it. I personally really struggle with playing wide receivers that are 30+% owned, which he will be in my contests. So I honestly, I will have less Adams than the field. I can confidently say that. How chalky do I think P. Ryan's going to be? I don't think he's going to gain too much steam at all, Justin. Daniel Blaze is in our tournament every week. Appreciate you, man. That's awesome. What do I think about the Philly Panthers game? I like that game. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about it from a stacking perspective. We'll get there for sure. No Kamara love. Yeah, why? Not a lot of people are on Kamara. Not a lot of people are talking about him, I'll say. Yeah, how does Atlanta look outside of Pitts? That's the question. Jacobs, Javonte Williams. That's contrarian, my man. Najee checkdown season. Seriously. Patterson got hurt. What's up, Lane? How's it going, man? Good morning. Mixon playing today? It looks like it. Might be limited, though. That's what they're saying. Kamara, Terry, skinny stack? I don't mind that at all. Uzi. Sanders or Gibson in the flex? And I'm not really on either of those guys, to be completely honest. Am I all in on Josh Gordon? Well, he's not on the main slate, so at least he's not going to ruin my main slate lineups. Kamara is just so expensive, man. I get it, but like, who has the ceiling at low ownership? Maybe. Not on Najee, predicted pace down game. Yeah, the pace is the big concern in that one. I'm with you. Also that this offensive line is not very good and Denver's defensive line is very good. There's a lot of concerns there. But I still think that some of those things actually help Najee in terms of his floor in the passing game. David Felix, thanks for subscribing, my man. Appreciate you. You know, you have access to all of these polls, these great polls. So let's talk a little bit about some of these running backs. It looks like Derrick Henry's leading the way. So let's talk about Derrick Henry for a second. There's really not a lot to say. His price continues to go up. But, I mean, against this Jacksonville team, I just don't know if there's a lot of pass to him completely failing, right? Or we don't have, like, this massive ceiling, Christian McCaffrey, Kamara an amazing spot type of play, right? It's basically Derrick Henry at the top, and now that he's catching passes, it's a totally different play than what we used to talk about. So he's caught at least 2 passes in every single game this year. Just the floor that gives us alone. Like, get the ball in his hands and let him run. Like, he can just toss him dump offs. I just don't understand why they haven't done that until now. Makes no sense. So, if we were asking about cash games, I know someone mentioned that very early on in the conversation today. Yeah, I think Derrick Henry's a lock in cash games. I don't understand why you'd get away from it, personally. But the Najee Harris thing, this Broncos defense is good, but they're a little bit banged up, right? So how many running back situations can we accurately say are going to be playing like 97, 98% of the snaps? Like, it just doesn't happen now. So Najee Harris is going to be on the field the entire game. He's 7,300. He's cheap. He's very cheap. So let's talk about a couple of the cheaper guys a little bit deeper here. So Damien Williams, 5,800. Like, that's the price tag that opens everything up on FanDuel, in my opinion. So we know Montgomery's out. He could just literally slide right into that bell cow role. The only thing that I guess is a little bit scary about that is we kind of saw them scaling him back a little bit before the injury. So does that tell us that maybe the coaching staff doesn't like Damien Williams as much, or is that overthinking it? I'm not quite sure yet. But I think that Chicago is actually a little bit sneaky in this game. It's kind of interesting because Justin Fields has looked a little bit better, right? And like, this spot against the Raiders is, I don't know if it's necessarily like has like shootout potential, but I think that the pace is at least relatively safe. And if that does get to a point where like we're moving the ball down the field with Justin Fields, like he doesn't completely blow us up again, Damien Williams is just way too cheap for a guy that's going to be on the field that much, touch the ball that many times, right? So it's just like crazy, crazy low salary for him. So I strongly prefer just playing Damien Williams at 5,800 versus Leonard Fournette at 64, because there's a couple things that are working against Fournette here. Obviously, we know that Gio is going to be back, and I don't necessarily think that Gio is just going to come in and take that role completely. I don't think that at all, actually. Like, we saw Fournette lead this team in snaps every game this year. But if it takes away 2 or 3 of Lenny's catches, then eating like this 25% chalk with Fournette becomes a little bit less palatable to me. So I definitely think that it's still like Fournette's backfield to lose at this point. And like the Miami defense does want you to run, even though like Tom Brady's going to do whatever he wants. It's at least, I think it's interesting to figure out ways to get different outside of Leonard Fournette in this spot. So that's kind of where I'm at on like the chalk-ish type of running backs that we're talking about here. A lot of love for Saquon. So is Saquon a guy that we want like because of that game environment? Is it the volume we're finally see, like, I guess, skewing his way? Because if we're talking ceiling, you can make a pretty strong argument that Saquon has like a top 3 ceiling on this entire slate at running back, right? So let's move over quickly, because Saquon was a guy when we ran the Sims earlier. Saquon was the 3rd highest optimal rate. If he comes in around 16%, it's a little bit, I mean, it's not like you're gaining leverage here, but the price tag is nice for the volume. So he's like 400 cheaper than Devonte Adams, but the safety for just the touches from Saquon in a high-paced game. I mean, if we're just looking at his touches, he had 13 rush attempts, 16 rush attempts, 6 targets, 7 targets. So like that's back to like that Saquon type of volume that we like to see. It's almost like Kamara type of volume in the way to where even if he doesn't get up to like 15 carries, he does so much through the air and he's so active like in the passing game around the goal line. We've seen him like run wide receiver routes in the red zone, right? We just saw it last week when he scored. That the ceiling as a whole, like there's no bonus for 100 yards on FanDuel. If he gets into the box and he's getting all these touches, I still think that, and Reeves mentioned this on the show earlier this week, like there's going to be a situation very soon where Saquon Barkley's 9K on FanDuel. It could happen next week. They've been pretty aggressive with moving prices up and down, but I don't think they've gotten too aggressive enough with Saquon so far. So he's one of my favorite running back plays today, for sure. So it sounds like you guys, at least by looking at the poll, you guys are all over that. Too sharp. Let's see what I missed in the chat here. There is a lot of others here. Someone says Barkley at 3.6 yards per carry. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the efficiency is just not that important. We know that. Thoughts on A.J. Brown? Yeah, A.J. Brown was the guy that I thought was going to be sneaky. Now I no longer do, but he's still a great play at that price. He's so cheap, man. We'll get to wide receiver shortly. Nobody's talking about Hubbard. That's kind of interesting. Anthony Fiala, on Run the Sims, does optimal rate need to be higher than projected own to be a good play? No, definitely not. I mean, so it's the same thing, guys. It's if we're talking about these lineups, Devonte Adams can be a great play in one lineup and a terrible play in another. It matters what's around it. The Dallas stack can be a terrible stack in one lineup and a great stack in another. It doesn't, like, these plays as individuals is not what we're doing here, right? Where we would just be like looking at ownership, or we would be looking at median projections a little bit heavier. It's how you build these together is what really matters, right? So let's we already did kind of a chalky stack. I do want to build a couple more teams, but one of the things that I told myself I was going to do today is I want to touch a little bit more on some of the tier 3 lineups. So let's do one of those quickly. So if you are a member of our tier 3s, you can kind of post some of your early Sunday lineups, and I'll go through them. So this is coming from Frost. Shout out to Frost. He's got a Burrow stack here. So he's got Burrow, Chase, Boyd, bringing it back with Adams. Okay. Derrick Henry, Damien Williams. Okay, I like it. Robert Tonyan. So he basically brought it back twice here with Tonyan and Adams. So a little bit more correlation. He's got a mini correlation with Ruggs and Damien. I love that. That's a way that you can get different with Damien for sure, is have a lower owned piece on the other side. Man, I like this team a lot, man. I don't have a ton of things to really say about it. I guess the only thing that I will say is I rarely bring it back with 2 guys. So if you did want to bring it back with Tonyan, you could move off of Adams' team potentially. or if you want to stay on Adams, which I think you're borderline contrarian enough to do, but if you wanted to stay with Adams, I think that the Tonyan thing actually does make some sense, right? Because that's going to differentiate your Adams teams just by having a really low owned tight end. So I don't hate that, actually. And what I like about the Cincy part of this stack is that T. Higgins, I think, is going to draw a decent amount of ownership. So the fact that you want Chase and Boyd, I might kind of backtrack a little bit on that. I think you might be contrarian enough here. So after 1 p.m., you're going to know everything but Damien and Ruggs. So some other kind of mini stacks that you could consider if things aren't going well is something from this LA Chargers and Cleveland game, which I think would be at least an interesting way to go about it. Ruggs, I think, is going to be, where do we think Ruggs will be? Let me check the ownership on Ruggs. Because, like, eyeballing this, Ruggs feels like he's going to be like 5% or lower on FanDuel. Yeah, we're projecting him at 1.1% ownership. So, nice job, man. I think your correlation is really good here. So, I think that's a good start, man. What else we got in here? No other lineup so far to touch on quickly, but very interesting. Some other running backs, and then we'll move on to wide receiver. Because there's actually, like, the wide receiver slate is a lot more interesting than running back slate, actually, today. So we'll get there. I'm going to check the chat quickly if we have any other running back questions. Is Tony Pollard a good play with Zeke being not 100%? I'm not playing Tony Pollard in DFS, at least, my man. Bring back with a Zoma instead of Boyd? Maybe. That's not the worst idea, John. Should I flex Darnell Mooney? Is it Darnell Mooney or Chuba Hubbard? Yeah, I mean, I like Mooney a lot. Chuba Hubbard, like we saw last week, like what the kind of the floor is for him, right? The price is like a little bit harder to get to, but I mean, it's not like the Mike Davis situation. We talked about it. I had 0 Chuba Hubbard last week. It's not really the Mike Davis situation that we had last year where he just takes the entire Christian McCaffrey role. I like T. Higgins as well, Brady, but I think it makes sense to like get a little bit different on some of those stacks. If Madison starts, can you play him and Jefferson together? That's a really good question, Anthony. So normally, I don't have any problem with this at all. Justin Jefferson specifically, like if we just look at like his correlation to just running backs in general, he hasn't performed really well when Dalvin Cook goes off. It's actually a very significant negative correlation. Same with KJ Osborne. So in theory, you'd think that Adam Thielen is the one that wouldn't project as well with Dalvin. That's actually true as well. So like, I guess Minnesota is one of those situations where I want to be on the passing game or I want to be on the running game. Because when the running game tends to do really well, it's when Minnesota kind of tries to muck things up a little bit. And I honestly, for a lot of teams, don't have any problem putting the running back in my stacks. Minnesota's not really one of them. So I would say either one. Damien Williams for the Bears. Yeah, he's a great play, man. Kareem Hunt thoughts. I just really struggle with these like very split backfields, right? So like the Kareem Hunt and Chubb, like it's always like an easy late swap. I don't think they're ever going to be core plays for me unless the prices get to a point where it makes sense. Are you better to go Henry and Shenault or Zeke, Aaron Jones, and Jefferson? I don't know if that salary works out, does it? I mean, I think in a vacuum, it's probably like, I mean, it seems like very stars and scrub with Zeke, Aaron Jones, and Jefferson. But yeah, I love Henry and Shenault. I think that probably just Henry and Shenault and then get different around it. Those are tough questions, Daniel. We can use the rangefinder around the Sims to go through some 2v2 stuff if you want as well. Answer gets dropped a lineup into the chat, so let's talk about it. Another one of our tier 3 subscribers. Kyla Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, skinny stack with nothing on Sam. I don't mind that, right? So this narrative is interesting to me. And it's not necessarily untrue. The fact that we already talked about it, Arizona's been spreading their ball around a lot, which has kind of led to DeAndre Hopkins not having that elite high-end target share as some of the other guys in that price range. But with everyone talking about that, like Hopkins ownership right now, 10%-ish, just probably because Kyler is so popular. So I don't mind that skinny. And then we got Damien and Ruggs, mini stack, okay. We got an Aaron Jones one-off here at 1 p.m., which I like. Let's get this information. If we have a game where Devonte Adams fails and Aaron Jones goes nuts, easy to stay on some of the chalk. So we got Saquon late. We got Ruggs, Damien late. So we got 2 chalky running backs coming, which I think like is totally fine because we'll know what happens with Aaron Jones, right? And then we have the Aaron Jones Chase stack, which I like. Okay, so it is a mini stack. This is solid, man. And you got different at tight end. What I love what you did about tight end, we have all these super thin tight end plays, right? And some of them are going to be a little bit more popular than others. Jonnu is not going to be popular. I can't remember. I think it may have been TJ Hernandez talked about Jonnu as like one of the better leverage options on the slate. 4,900. He's the reason you're able to get a lot of these studs in, right? So your big fades here are Devonte Adams, DJ Moore, the big dog. So like there's some scary fades here, man. But the good news is you're going to know where your team's at for sure by 4 p.m. So my advice would be if you are, so in a scenario where Aaron Jones fails and Devonte Adams has a great game, I don't know if you can stay on Kyler at that point. At that point, I'm probably moving to either something in Chicago or maybe a Herbert premium stack, something like that. I would say that if you really get buried at 1 p.m., I would probably not stay on Kyler. That's my initial lean on it. Frost says he has almost that exact same lineup. Interesting. Yeah, it's a good team. I don't mind that at all. Let's close this poll and let's move on to wide receiver. What time is it? It's 10:04. Yeah, I think we can move on. So the top end of wide receiver, if you are a subscriber of the channel, sub-only vote. Where are we at on the elite side of wide receiver? Exclamation point vote, space the number. Devonte Adams, Justin Jefferson, Nuke Hopkins, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, or other. Where are we at on like the high end of wide receiver? I wouldn't even say like CD. Like where is the elite chalk going to go and where can we take advantage? Who are the best plays at the top end of wide receivers? What I want to accomplish with this poll. Where are we at, guys? A lot of Adams love. It's probably warranted. Answer, I do see your second team, my man. Very similar to that first team. But I really like the McLaurin Kamara mini stack that you went with. I think this one's a little bit more contrarian, even without Aaron Jones in it. Hold on. I might like this second team better. A little bit more correlation, too. Pitts TD. Oh, God. Oh. Pitts TD. Of course. I think I've played Pitts on some of my main teams every single week this year. Just so brutal. Just so brutal. All right, Devonte Adams. Devonte Adams. Finally. Yeah, all right, we can be happy. Could have used it last week. I think I had Kyle Pitts on my Tyreek team last week. Is the only reason I'm tilting that. Pitts is going to have 25 points before the game's over. Yeah. I feel like I don't have enough Terry. I mean, Terry's a great play, man. It's just so expensive to get to that Terry Kamara stack that you're definitely on some fades for sure. Pitts backers conflicted. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happens every year, man. These guys that were just on for multiple weeks on like Thursday night or one of these London games or whatever it is, that's when they score. Has to be. Do you want chalk or who do I want to use? There's nothing wrong with chalk, man. I say this all the time. Like, you just have to have pieces around it that differentiate you because you don't want to be holding hands at the top. Never. No regularly engaged today. Okay, yeah, like I said, I spent 0 time on that game. So, makes some sense. What do I think about Ayuk? Man, no one wants to play Ayuk, okay? Because everyone wants to play Debo now. I think Ayuk's fine. I mean, I still think the talent's there. Harmon doesn't seem nervous. And that's the guy that I defer to on wide receiver talent stuff and how he's looked. So he's gonna be contrarian, a way to get different with Trey Lance. So I don't mind it, man. Where are we at in this poll? A lot of Devonte Adams, and then basically even the rest of the way. Not a ton of Terry. We have a couple others in here. So let's talk about the top end of wide receiver here. So Devonte Adams, you guys don't need me at this point to tell you he's a great play, especially since last week he had kind of like a sub optimal performance at similar ownership, right? Like people were on him last week as well, but he still had 11 targets. Like we talked about it. Like Aaron Rodgers is going to make sure that Devonte Adams is happy at all costs. So is this the spot where Devonte Adams gets in the box twice? Probably. His target share is over 35%. He's still too cheap for that type of volume. So it's not that I don't like Devonte Adams, it's I don't really like him as a one-off unless the rest of your team is super weird. That's kind of where I'm at on this. So if I end up with any Devonte Adams, it's either going to be in a stack or it's going to be on a team that's really weird. I don't want to be in the middle on that. If we, Justin Jefferson, he's my favorite play in that entire game. Nuke Hopkins, who we just talked about a ton. DJ Moore, one of the things that I enjoyed hearing from Harmon this week on that segment was that people think about DJ Moore as this guy that gets these like safe underneath targets, but man, he is getting deep. And that's happened since last year, and people still talk about Robbie Anderson as the lid lifter on this team. That's just not true. DJ Moore showed more improvement in reception perception than almost any wide receiver he's ever seen. And what was one of those other guys that did us, like maybe not the exact same, but showed a ton of growth in reception perception over like 1 or 2 years? It's Devonte Adams. Like he was one of Harmon's worst rated reception perception wide receivers when, like, I think it was his rookie year, and he showed crazy improvement, and now he's an absolute superstar. So Harmon has like literally said multiple times that DJ Moore is on the axis of one of these guys that could be someone that we're talking about as like the elite of the elite, and now he's priced up there and people don't want to play him, and that might be a mistake. It's kind of where I'm at on that. So I do like him quite a bit, especially if this ownership holds on DJ Moore. Currently we have him at, he's actually gained a little bit of steam on FanDuel. So we got him at like 18% right now. So that's a little bit higher than I expected, but I think there's still plenty of ways to get different in that game. So I don't mind the DJ Moore one-off versus Adams, because it is kind of that same price range as some of these Dallas guys. So it's kind of interesting. Let's talk about A.J. Brown. Obviously, the hamstring injury is never ideal at wide receiver, right? So there's definitely some, I guess, fragility to this projection. And some of the things that we should be thinking about is obviously no Julio Jones. This Jaguars defense is not very good. So like the competition for A.J. Brown is what pushes him to this spot, right? And if we're talking purely like, even just like, I'm not like a big points per dollar person, but at 6,900, like A.J. Brown is just so underpriced on FanDuel. It's ridiculous. So if you bake in the injury risk, I think it is worth it. Obviously, so the ownership, it looks like, got messed up because like all these different name identifiers. I'll have to message Justin about that. But I mean, I'll just give AJ Brown's going to be 15% for sure, or higher at higher stakes. So I liked him a lot more when I thought he was contrarian, but I still think he's a really good play in terms of just being super underpriced. All the targets for AJ Brown. I agree, man. But hamstrings are scary. John, I'm with you for sure. It's not fun to watch these guys coming off some sort of soft tissue injury. It's just not great. So CeeDee Lamb, let's talk about CeeDee Lamb for a second, because I think this is a big decision point for a lot of people. If you're playing this game, another price tag is 6,900, where he is just way too cheap. But people are on this. And what's crazy about where DFS is now is that people are on this. 2 years ago, a guy gets 5 targets, 3 targets, has like under 70 yards. Like people are out. They're just not playing this guy. But now people are buying the dip. You know what I mean? So I miss the days in DFS where you could just play a guy like CeeDee Lamb at this price tag at sub 10%. It's just not the case anymore. So I think if you're playing CeeDee Lamb, you're playing this game, I like the idea of having contrarian pieces around it at 1 p.m. So let's talk about, let's do this. Let's build the Dallas team. We haven't done that yet. I think the best way, we can talk about this all day long, but I need to be able to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So let's just do Dak. Let's do Lamb. Let's just do the premium. And we'll add Amari to this. Obviously, Bradbury, I mean, the argument you can make against Amari is that, like, I don't care too much about wide receiver cornerback matchups. Like, everyone's just scared that DK Metcalf is going to get shut down on Thursday night, and then he just goes off, scores 2 touchdowns. But I will say that Amari has been, especially when banged up, has been pretty sensitive to elite cornerbacks. So if Amari, we want to get a little bit different with this as well. And I think Amari is going to be popular enough that we could consider not playing Amari on this team. If he's going to be around 15%, we could play Dalton Schultz on this team because he's trying to get rid of correlation. Let's do that. Let's start with that. Maybe Amari would make sense at some point. So on the other side of this Giants stack, I think that Saquon's totally fine. I think that Kadarius Toney is totally fine. But for this specific build, let's go with Toney just because I do want to get some contrarian players in early that I think are going to provide us some leverage. So at 1 p.m., a good example of some of those like lower owned leverage type of plays, like we talked about, I think the Minnesota guys are still interesting. Jefferson, Thielen. I think that Chris Godwin is interesting for leverage. If you really want to go back to someone like Deontay Johnson for leverage, I think that's okay. Terry McLaurin. I think that if we're looking purely at like, I originally thought that we would get a little bit more leverage from Kamara, so that's kind of what has me hesitating on McLaurin a little bit. So maybe he's a little bit better of a one-off play. So we could do Aaron Jones, but he's still looking like he's gaining a little bit of steam as well. So let's try it. Let's try a mini with like Jefferson Swift, which I kind of like. So we'll get that information at 1. It's not going to be super low owned or anything like that, but it is at least a start. And then we'll have 2 slots left to get kind of weird with. So let's go ahead and just put in, I think that Philly is just the one that I like putting in as a placeholder because they're cheap. So we have a ton of salary to work with here. So some guys that I definitely think are going to go much lower than they should. Mentioned Terry McLaurin. I think that Chris Godwin kind of stands out to me. And so we could go that direction. We could go with some of these Miami guys on the other side of Godwin. So we could go, if we put Godwin in here, we're going to need a running back. Let's look at the running back position for leverage. Let's start there. The Minnesota guys now, like probably no one's going to play them, right? Derrick Henry's pretty chalky. Najee is going to look like he's pretty chalky. There's not a lot of like really strong, high upside running backs at 1 p.m. in my opinion on this slate. That's why I do like Swift kind of in this range. I think he still has a decent amount of upside. So let's throw in Aaron Jones because we got to think about how this team's not going to have Adams in it, right? And then we get to a point where we have 6,700. We could play Chuba Hubbard at 1 p.m. We could play someone like Damian Harris, which I think in this range is going to be pretty contrarian. We could go Antonio Brown, who I really like at 6,500. What if we played... I like some of the leverage in this Cleveland LA Chargers game for sure, but I want some 1 p.m. exposure that's going to be a little bit lower owned. We could switch this from Jefferson to Thielen, which, I mean, Thielen always goes lower, right? That gets us to 7,200 in the flex, a little bit more flexibility there. At that point, we can leave a slot open and play someone like Keenan Allen. We could just add Amari to this stack. So that's kind of how I'm thinking through it. I want to have multiple pieces at that point to be super low if I'm going to like stay on this Dak stack. Does that make sense, guys? We'll keep working through those. Nice. FA in the chat. Plus 1,100 to get Pitts to score first. That's awesome, man. Congrats. Marvin or Chenault? I like Chenault a little bit better, my man. Barkley or Samuel? Barkley or Samuel? Is it Curtis Samuel versus Saquon Barkley? I don't get that one. Barkley, my man. If Cook is out, is Madison worth the risk at low cost? Yeah, I mean, Madison's one of the better plays on the slate for sure. If Cook's out, I just don't know if he will be. A.J. Brown, multiple days of full practice. I like A.J. Brown a lot, my man. I do. Yeah, Oatmeal mentioned Thielen in the chat. I think Thielen's the better leverage option for sure. I like actually a lot of the Miami guys as kind of a buy low in the spot because if we see, like, we know the offensive line issues for the Patriots, right? And if they end up having to skew a little bit more pass heavy, then we could see the other side of the game pace up a little bit as well. So guys like Devontae Parker, guys like Jalen Waddle, when people are moving towards Gesicki at a lower price tag, or I guess just to get your tight end exposure, I think it's interesting to go to some of those other weapons. So let's move over to a cheaper. We've already talked through some of these wide receivers, but let's go to the top value wide receiver option. So I said value this time and not necessarily like punts because I wanted to include guys like Lamb and Shenault in this. So top value wide receiver, guys that are mispriced at wide receiver for week 5. So the sub only vote, exclamation point space, or at vote space the number to place your vote. Toss a like on this video, all that good stuff, guys. I'm going to check in on the listener league quick. See how full this thing is. So we got CeeDee Lamb, Kadarius Toney, Laviska Shenault, Curtis Samuel, Jacoby Myers, or other. Where are we at on like the cheaper wide receivers or guys that are just mispriced? So currently, guys, in the listener league, FanDuel.com/Holka to get in this. It's a 3-entry max. It's rake free. We're at 82% capacity right now. I think the record for us is about 18 something. So a lot of free money in here, basically. Obviously, it being rake free, that's just 20% of the prize pool right there, or 15%, something like that, at this price point. And then it is relatively flat, 3-entry max, all that good stuff. So it's like I say it on pretty much every show, but it's the best, one of the best contests that you can put your money into in all of DFS. So FanDuel.com/Holka to get in there. Let's fill this thing this week, guys. If we fill it this week, I bet they give us a single entry contest in addition next week at a different price point, which would be fun. What do we got on the poll? Where are we at on these cheaper wide receivers, these value wide receivers, or these mispriced wide receivers? No one thinks that CeeDee Lamb is mispriced. That's interesting. I tend to disagree a little bit with that one. A lot of Shenault love. Yeah, I love the Shenault call. We talked about Shenault at length with Harmon this week, and he's of the mindset that obviously Chark is out, that Shenault can come in and basically take some of those downfield targets a little bit more than most people think. So I do have a lot of interest in Shenault. I think he's fine in mini stacks. I think he's fine. Like you could literally go AJ Brown, Shenault, Derrick Henry, Shenault, as long as you're getting different at some of your other spots. I think that's a really good spot to do it. A couple new subscribers as well. Andrew, Amanda, appreciate you guys being with us. I need to do a better job of keeping up with these. I know on Sundays it gets pretty crazy. Josh McGowan. What's up, Josh? How's it going? I know David Felix earlier. Bunch of new subscribers. Appreciate you guys. Any so tier 2, tier 3 in the chat. You guys like that we're going through some of these initial Sunday lineups? Is that a valuable perk for you guys? I think it's kind of fun to do those. Let's check out another one from Frost quickly as we're waiting for some more votes to come in. Guys, we got over almost 600 people in here. Let's get to 100 votes on this. Don't be shy. No one's going to judge you for your votes. Another lineup here from our tier 3 Frost. We got a Kyla Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, bringing it back with Ayuk and Dwelly. You love these like double bringbacks, Frost. I would try and get away from that, man. I really would. I think that you want to overweight one side of it and you want to weight the side a little heavier with the quarterback. Paul Miller, thanks for subscribing, my man. Welcome in. So I guess that differentiates you in lineup construction, but I don't know if it's super necessary. So I would choose one between Ayuk and Dwelly personally. You do have that Shenault and Henry stack that we were just talking about, so I like that. I think Damien's a totally fine one-off, especially since it's at 4 p.m., so if things go bad. Like this 5,800 price tag just makes so much work, right? It's the reason you're able to get Henry, Adams, and Kyler in the same team. So after 1 p.m., what information are you going to have? You're going to know what happened with Derrick Henry. You're going to know what happened with Devonte Adams. And you're going to know what happened with Panthers defense. I don't mind that. It doesn't always have to be contrarian first. I just prefer that. If you hit on some of these chalk plays early, I still would be of the mindset that you still need to differentiate the rest of the way. It's basically just the inverse. I would rather have contrarian upside early or just be completely buried by the chalk early, because then you're pivoting either way. There's less value in hitting the chalk early because at that point, if you're playing what you think are the best plays the rest of the way, you're kind of holding hands a little bit more than you want to. That's my only knock on this, like having so much chalk early leading right into a chalkier stack. We get another one here. Cody Huffman. What's up, Cody? This is an off the board team. We're going to talk about this quickly. Where's the poll at? Did we get a few more votes in here? We got 61 votes. Am I reading that right? No, we got 40 votes. How is that possible? 40 votes and 555 people in here. Maybe you guys you're just not on this cheaper wide receiver train. All right, that's fine. Let's talk through this one lineup, then we'll move through the positions a little bit quicker. We'll do some more of these at the end. Jared Goff. Quentin Cephas, Hawkinson, bringing it back with Thielen. That's going to be super low, and it's at 1 p.m. Love that. Okay. You got Najee, who's going to be pretty chalky, but that's fine. And at that point, you'll know where you're at with Patriots defense, paying up to be contrarian. I bet you get Patriots defense at sub 5% in some of your contests, man, against Houston, which seems criminal. You'll have Adams in there. So you'll have the Adams info and then the info from your contrarian stack. That's another way to do it. If you want to play chalk early, mix in a contrarian stack also and leave yourself outs at 4 p.m. So you've got Damien and Waller as your late chalk. You can easily pivot this to something different. This is a really smart build. And I don't even like Jared Goff, and I don't even like this game. I don't even like this side of the game as much. But that's a very contrarian way to build, and I think a smart one, man. So shout out to you, Cody. Let's talk through wide receiver a little bit more as we kind of gain a little bit more depth here. We talked about some of the top guys. CeeDee Lamb, we talked about quickly, that people normally wouldn't be on him. Just 8 targets over the last couple games, so there's definitely that risk. And Amari Cooper banged up. Maybe we push a little bit more targets to CeeDee Lamb. Dalton Schultz, hopefully this doesn't continue. What do we think about the super cheap end of this? We have Curtis Samuel on the list here. He only ran 16 routes, but still got a target on 4 of those. So he's someone that they're actively think of it as Marvin Jones in some way. He knows this system. So when he's out there and he's at full strength, he's going to be a huge part of his offense at some point. We just don't know exactly when that's going to be. And now that De'Ami Brown and Logan Thomas are out, maybe Samuel comes in and gets a few extra targets. He seems like a little bit of a lower upside play for FanDuel for me, but I think he's at least in play because of what he opens up. Some of the other wide receivers that I probably like better than him, I still like trying to get to someone like Jacoby Myers, who I think scores today, finally. We talked about Kyle Pitts getting in the box, but I think Jacoby Myers is a great guy to buy in on this week. I think that Kenny Golladay is not getting near enough love, especially with all the Danny Dimes stacks out there. I think he's interesting. In this mid-range, Shenault, I kind of agree with you guys in the poll right now. Shenault feels like the one that's just so drastically underpriced because they're not basically taking into account, I think, effectively enough that Chark being out is going to open up more valuable targets for Shenault. So I'm in on that. DeMarque Parker is out. Ooh, okay. So Jalen Waddle season. Or Gesicki. I mean, that makes our decision a little bit easier now, right? That's good. I like when that stuff happens. Makes it a little bit easier for everyone, obviously, but we'll see the public move when these running back situations happen late, but it doesn't happen as much at wide receiver. I would imagine more people just going to move towards Gesicki, who's basically a wide receiver anyways. I don't know. Is Waddle going to be chalky after that? We'll have to check in on ownership when that updates here. Well, let's go ahead and close this poll. Complete it. And then, since we're on the subject of Gesicki, let's go through tight end quickly, and then we'll go through some stacks. We'll build a few more lineups, and we'll talk through a few other. I just want to make sure I have enough time to catch a bunch more of these questions in the chat. So top tight end, price considered. We got Darren Waller. We got Mike Gesicki, Ricky Seals-Jones, Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram, or other. Sub-only vote. Exclamation point vote, space and number. Where are we at tight end, guys? We won't spend too much time here. But with the news with Parker, maybe Gesicki gains a little bit more steam here. Would not be shocking. The one thing that I'll say about Gesicki, and you guys are going to hear me talk about this a lot, I rarely play these tight ends with low team totals because it's such a touchdown-heavy position that if you're missing out on basically touchdowns that we project from the entire team, there's just less opportunities for them to completely get there and get there from their ceiling. If they're super cheap, I get it. But we're talking about Dalton Schultz. I'm not even a Dalton Schultz guy, but that team total is enticing. We've heard a couple people in chat already mention Cameron Brate. Yes, someone in the chat literally right now. Cameron Brate, Tampa Bay stacks, 3rd highest team total on the slate. I love that. Or if you want to get super weird with someone like Dan Arnold, or get weird with some sort of Conklin with your Cousins or something like that, these higher team totals, I almost want to skew more heavily towards that. And I know Frost, you had that one team that had Robert Tonyan in it. I don't hate that. I mean, that's just outside that top tier of team totals. It's when we get into these Noah Fants and TJ Hawkinson's and Mike Gesicki's, like the team total is so much lower that unless they have crazy volume, like someone like Darren Waller or Hawkinson has, it's really hard for them to get there if they can't get if they are less likely to get a touchdown. So that's my concern with Gesicki. Joshua Jones, TikTok brought you here. I love that, man. Welcome over. This show is a lot different than my TikToks, that's for sure. So I appreciate you being here, man. A lot of hate over on TikTok these days, but the idea is to move people over there and a more discoverable platform over to the main show. So I appreciate you, man. Conklin in Minnesota with the implied low team total, low end punt. Yeah, I think he's fine. He's an easy guy to play with your cousin snacks. Cody, I've never heard anyone say that before. Tony Hawkinson. That's just incredible. Do I like either Eagles tight ends with the Darnold stack? Yeah, I talked about Goddard as like a potential like super low owned pivot off of some of the guys in that range. I think Goddard's fine in mini stacks, yeah. Derek, it's tough to look at a lineup just in text, man. Sorry about that. It's easier for me. That's part of the reason we're doing it with the tier 3 is it's easier for me to just look at a lineup and talk about it on stream than look at it through the text. Marvin Sanders. Who's Marvin Sanders? Swift or Williams? Swift is a great play today, Jonathan. If the game script is right, like Swift is always going to be one of those guys that can rack up a ton of catches. Dwelly, Nate Frog says. I think Dwelly's fine. Do we want a little bit more upside than that? Like on FanDuel, if he gets into the box, it's great with your Lance stacks. It's fine. Total's a little bit. I mean, the game environment's great there, right? So let's focus on that. Just saw a crumpet for the first time. My wife watching the game. What's a crumpet? I don't even know what that is. Is that? Oh, that's food, right? I always forget it's the London game, right? Where are we at on this tight end pool? Gesicki love. Tony is risky. Yeah, I mean Tony is not a lock by any means, but if they're missing, obviously no Shepard, no Slayton, you would think for a guy that talented, even if he's super raw, they're gonna like draw up some specific plays for Kadarius Toney, right? So I think he has a little bit more upside than people realize. Higgins, Myers, Cooks, Sanders picks 2. I think it's Myers and Cooks for me, but it's close with Higgins versus one of those guys. I guess like the volume with Myers and Cooks. I don't think you can go wrong with that. If Madison starts, is he under-owned due to lack of late swap preparation? Maybe, Joey. And that's a good question. It's a good way to think about it. I just think that now the way everyone is super tuned in, these running back, like late news on running backs basically happens to skew the field there more drastically. But I think what you're getting to with that is if we don't get any definitive Dalvin Cook news, does Madison go super low? Maybe. And we saw them basically split last week. If that happens again, you're dead. But if we get Madison for 20 touches at 3% at 1 p.m., I don't mind that idea. Probably more of a large field play than small field play, I would say. But yeah, I don't hate the idea at all. Literally torn between A.J. Brown or Deontay Johnson. Rich, I have an idea for you here. So, obviously, runthesims.com, our official tools partner. Runthesims.com/Holka, 10% off. Tier 2 and Tier 3 get 20% off. But what we have here is the rangefinder. So if you're trying to decide between two players, in my opinion, you shouldn't be just looking at the projections. You should be looking at their range of outcomes. So, I'm not sure if we're talking PPR here, but we're going to go FanDuel scoring. So if you're in between A.J. Brown and who's the other guy? Deontay? Was that it? Yeah, Deontay. So if you're in between these two guys, what you can do is you can throw this in the tool. We're going to calculate. Obviously, all the stuff here is being simulated 10,000 times, right? So it's totally different than just like a tool that's using your projections. And it's going to give you a range of outcomes for these guys. And man, is the median close. So A.J. Brown, barely projected for more than Deontay. Barely a higher win rate. So what's interesting here is the high-end ceiling does seem like it's a little bit higher for A.J. Brown when the floor is essentially the same. So I think that's it for me, man. If I just blindly would have answered that question, it probably would have been A.J. Brown anyway. But it's nice to see the range of outcomes as it gets further towards the tail, the 90th percentile or higher. That's when A.J. Brown starts to separate a little bit. So I like that. That would probably be where I'm at. Lockett or Godwin in a trade. Ooh, man, my mind is so far away from trades right now, if I'm being honest, but I guess Godwin. Gesicki volume percent doesn't stretch the field. That's true, but you got to think about it this way, too, if we're talking about Jalen Waddle, is that he's actually played in the slot a lot this year, too. So if you're thinking about Jalen Waddle as only someone that's going to get these down-the-field targets, I don't know if that's correct. Do you mind Brady stack with no run back? Oh, with Godwin. Yeah, I don't think the bringbacks are a necessity. I really don't. What I do think is a smart way to build is to figure out different mini stacks that you like. So let's go ahead and build a Brady team. I keep telling myself I'm going to do more of these builds so you guys understand more of what I'm talking about. So let's do exactly what you're saying. Let's do a Brady, Godwin, and Brate with no bring back on Miami. Since now the Miami side, I would imagine, is going to be a little bit more popular. But let's just say that we don't have one for this specific build. It leaves us a lot of flexibility here. And honestly, with Tom Brady's price at $8,400, I think a lot of people are just going to play Kyler for $100 more. So that's our 1 p.m. I think this is going to be contrarian enough to where we could chalk it up a little bit with some Dallas and Giants exposure. So if we did CeeDee Lamb and Saquon on this team, for example, as a mini, you can always move off of that later, but I like that. I think that we probably don't have enough salary to get to the big dog, but let's see if we pay down roughly at defense. We put big dog in, basically punting the rest of the way, right? Yeah, 5,200. That's really tough to stomach, but if we put in Damien, is this even possible? Nope, not really. So this can't be a Derrick Henry team, roughly. We could go Ruggs mini stack, which we've talked about a lot today. Ruggs and Damien mini stack, which is interesting. Then we have 9,100 left at that last position where we can get in Kamara. And then we can upgrade our defense, which I don't hate. I think that's interesting. What other mini stacks at 4 p.m. do we like? One thing that I haven't talked about enough today that I actually kind of like is I like these Bears guys a bit. I like Robinson and Mooney. So if you want to flip the build a little bit here and not play Damien, what do you guys think about an Allen Robinson? Maybe I hate Josh Jacobs, but you could go that range or that route to get a little bit different. Then you got 7,500 left in the flex. At that point, you could add to that mini stack with someone like Darren Waller if you really wanted to, or we get a little bit more flexibility here with either the Nuke Chubb range. This is a nice salary range if you really wanted to do it like that. I don't hate that. That gets me to something I think is reasonable. But if we went A-Rob and Ruggs, gets us to 8,800 at running back. That gets you to Kamara, which I don't mind, or it gets you to Aaron Jones. So if you wanted to get a little bit more different, how does this lineup completely shoot up the leaderboards? It's probably if the big dog and or Devonte Adams fails. So how does something like that happen? Maybe it's because Aaron Jones goes crazy at 1 p.m. Or maybe it's because Alvin Kamara outscores Derrick Henry at a similar price pivot. So that's how you should be thinking about that. Past the stack. You build in your mini stacks, you build in your correlation along the way. We have some stuff in here that's a little bit chalky, obviously, but the lineup as a whole, I think personally, is super unique. How do you guys feel about that one? Jake loves it in the chat. Awesome. If you replace Barkley with the big dog, you can do it in a mini stack with Toady and Lamb. That's interesting. That's interesting. Do you force secondary correlation? I prefer to have mini stacks versus someone coming back on the other side of my main stack, as crazy as that sounds. because you can play these mini stacks with like a running back and a wide receiver based on game script. You can play it a lot of different ways, and you can play these kind of like situations that you like, but you don't necessarily want to completely stack up a little bit easier. Saquon Tony. Yeah, and you can always just play two guys on like one side of that game as well if you don't like it. I just like the mini stacks with like one guy on each side of the game. I like those quite a bit. All right, so we made it through tight end. Let's end this poll. We didn't really talk about a lot of the tight ends, but essentially you're looking at, I think, Darren Waller at the top. You're looking at Gesicki for a little bit cheaper now. I think Hawkinson's an interesting pivot, but kind of a gross week overall at tight end. I think paying down for a lot of those guys with correlation is probably the route that I'm going to go. Let's go with, oh, we still have this. Let's end this poll. And then let's talk through some, what are our favorite stacks? This is one of the ones I like to kind of save for the end because I want to get an idea of what you guys think after we've gone through all the positions. So sub-only vote, top stack in week 5. This is a one-sided stack. So which team are we most excited to stack up today? We got the Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Minnesota Vikings, Tampa Bay Bucks, Arizona Cardinals, or other. Exclamation point, vote, space, the number. Where are we at on this, guys? Couldn't Waller just bury the other tight ends? Yeah, I mean, easily. He's also very expensive in comparison to the other ones. So yeah, I mean, Waller is, pretty easily the best tight end play on the slate, no doubt. Especially on FanDuel where the prices are so much more condensed than they are on other sites. You don't have like these guys at like 2,300, 3K, and then Waller at 6,500, 7K. You know what I mean? On FanDuel, we have Waller at, what's his price? We have Waller at 7,400, and then basically the cheapest guys are like 5K. So it's like, it doesn't do it. It's easier to justify getting all the way up at tight end on FanDuel. Unless you're just adding correlation, like kind of what we did with Tom Brady there, which is what I would like to do with the cheaper guys, basically. Where are we at on stacks right now? A lot of others. A lot of Minnesota love, a lot of Giants and Dallas love, as expected. Not a lot of Arizona love. Interesting. Gesicki going to be very high owned today. Totally agree with you, Vince. The 49ers backup tight end. Yeah, we talked about Dwelly for a second. I think he's fine. Just not a lot of upside there, but totally fine with your stacks with Trey Lance for sure. If you start a stack with Murray, just hope D-Hop gets targets again. Yeah, that's the narrative, right? It's that it's so spread out, but it's also been true, right? So stacking up Kyler is not the easiest thing to do because it isn't as condensed. I prefer to have these situations where it's basically like a running quarterback with one specific option. That's like the best case scenario. So you play Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs, stuff like that. Vince, no one likes playing our cards. Tough scene, man. Tampa Bay, most low-owned stack. You think so? People love playing Tom Brady, man. You could be right, though. There's some leverage there for sure. I don't hate it. A lot of others, so I'm trying to catch up over here. Is Dwelly a trap? Probably. Very, very cheap. On FanDuel specifically, like, it's tougher for me to get there with Dwelly. There's just not a lot of upside there. Bengals. A lot of Bengals love. I think the Bengals stack was one that I actually considered putting in this poll. I think it's pretty sharp. Zach Wilson looks bad. That is not good for the best ball shares, my man. I have a ton of the rookie quarterbacks. What about a Broncos stack? Not so much on the Broncos stack. No. Best wide receiver value is Cobb. Cobb with Rodgers. Yeah, I don't think you can play Cobb as a one-off. Everyone's going to be on Lenny with Tampa Bay. That's true, Jake. So think about it, I guess, with the lens of maybe Tom Brady is more of a leverage opportunity than just like a standalone good stack. I buy that. I think people are like actually getting a little bit more soured on Lenny as like the last couple days have gone on. Joe, now Dwelly will hit because he said that. It's very possible, my man. Apologies on the Dwelly mush there. Still strongly prefer, honestly, like if you're going to pay all the way down, I prefer just like correlating Evan Ingram with Danny Dimes or playing someone like Ricky Seals-Jones. Like, I don't know. I just like someone that actually has like wide receiver type of upside versus a guy that's going to catch the ball and fall down. Fields and Mooney, I think that's a really sharp stack one. It's so cheap, and everyone's just falling in love with Trey Lance and just going to completely avoid Fields. The passing game in Chicago, I think, is probably a better leverage opportunity than Brady because everyone's going to play Damien. I really like that. I wouldn't be shocked if that's one of the ones that I end up landing on, because if I had to, I could play something different at 4 p.m., right? So if I wanted to play some of the early chalk, a team that I would maybe do it with would be like a field stack at 4 p.m. Think that could work. Carr, Waller, Hunter stack? Maybe. I rarely play Derek Carr, and that's just like a weird bias I have probably. How do we feel about Fursker? Jags terrible against the tight end. I wouldn't be too worked up about matchups this early in the year, for sure. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of options there, so I think it makes some sense. That Jags-Tennessee game there's so many different ways you can go about it, for sure. So you guys are telling me that we got almost 600 people in here, and only 38% of you actually have a take on a stack? What's that all about? Car sucks, to be honest. Joey, thank you for your subscription, my man. Thanks for being with us. Paul Miller, if I missed yours earlier, welcome, my man. Like the passing game for Chicago if you hit on early chalk. Yeah. I think that's the type of build that the Chicago stacks make the most sense. Should we build one of those? We've been talking about it a lot. Let's do it. Let's do it. So we'll check in here on the Listener League. Let's refresh. I think this is Jake's team, which he still needs to send me a late swap for. 85% full. FanDuel.com/Holka to get in there. Rake free, 3-entry max, $5. All that good stuff. 2K up top. Let's see what it looks like with Fields. A Fields double, honestly, I think is totally fine. And at that point, maybe you do play Darren Waller on this team. And I would imagine we can chalk this up a little bit. We can probably play Henry. I don't know if we can play Adams, but let's see if it works. Because after we pay down at defense, just my defense that I keep plugging in at the cheaper end, Philly, we can make this work. Man, Fields at 6,400 is kind of nice. Kind of spicy. Bears double stack. It is, but this is the type of build that I think makes a lot of sense for if you are going to play chalk early. So let's see what happens if we do a mini with Derrick Henry and Visca. Because he's 5,800. That's still a price that stands out to me. Gives us 6,600 at running back. At that point, we could play Madison if we feel good about that volume. We could chalk it up even more with Leonard Fournette, which I don't love. Damian Harris. So let me ask you guys this. A team like this, where we got Henry, Fournette, Adams, Visca, like a lot of chalk at 1 p.m., but Fields, Mooney, Robinson, like that's got to be different though, right? So maybe this is a way that we can still jam in a lot of the running back plays that we like, or a lot of the chalk plays that we like, and get in Adams, but still be differentiated enough. So like this is the team that I think if the chalk goes crazy, this is still going to be in a position where you're relatively leveraged. I mean, Henry, Adams, Waller, all on one squad, Fournette. That's how I would attack the slate if I want to play a lot more chalk at 1 p.m. Connor to have exposure to the Arizona game. That would work too, Frost. But the good news is you can make that decision. Like if you have partial, I guess, hit on some of that chalk, you can get more different, right? At that point, like you don't have to play. You don't have to play Waller. You can get even like a little bit more. And if you don't play Waller, you can upgrade one of your other slots. That would probably be a team where I wouldn't want to play the Philly defense. I'd want to have the flexibility at 4 p.m. to play something super low into defense if possible. Fields barely threw it all last week. I mean, that's very true. I'm not even like trying to bang the drum on Fields. I'm just trying to say like that stack really leverages you on probably the most popular play on the slate on FanDuel, with Damien Williams because he's so cheap. Adams, Higgins, mini stack. I don't mind that. I like Higgins today a lot. Let's talk about a couple of wide receivers. We talked about Jacoby Myers. Obviously, he hasn't touched a touchdown. He hasn't caught a touchdown yet. Everyone says it's going to be the week. You hear it everywhere. And it's just like the volume at that level, it's just at some point got to lead to a touchdown, right? So I think this is a good spot to get on Jacoby Myers. He's too cheap, and it's because of the touchdowns. Devonta Smith is a guy that no one's really talking about, but his volume has been crazy, and he's getting downfield looks. I think he's fine at price. We were just talking about the Chicago guys. Like, the reason I added Mooney to it is like his usage, like it's like both sides of it. Robinson's usage we know has been elite in the past, but the target share hasn't quite been there. But the ADOT has gone up from Justin Fields versus the other quarterback messes that we've had in Chicago. So Mooney and Robinson, they're priced $400 apart, $500 apart, something close like that. But the usage is like relatively similar, and there's room for both sides to grow there. We haven't talked about OBJ once all day today, but if you are trying to get a little bit weird and kind of play that narrative, I know there's injuries, but like OBJ is someone that I could see pivoting to potentially on a struggling team at 4 p.m. I think that's the least we're talking about. And yeah, I think that like if you leave this with like a couple ideas, I want Laviska Shenault to be in your head just because I think he's way too cheap at 5,800. Jalen Hurts, yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is totally fine, my man. Like, we just talked about Devonta Smith. I think you can play with Devonta for sure. Scott Olson, new subscriber. Welcome, man. Welcome in. I was at the Vegas game a few weeks ago, a pretty amped crowd. I don't think that's a great spot for a rookie in Fields. Maybe. Yeah, that could be totally right. I'm not like trying to like beat the drum on Fields being like the best play on the slate by any means, but more trying to prove a point that if you're going to play a lot of that 1 p.m. chalk, you got to get weird, man. You really do. All right, let's go ahead and close up that poll. And I'll try and get to as many questions as I can before we wrap this up. Obviously, join us later on for the Tiltspace, 6 p.m. on the Establish the Run YouTube channel. Myself, Peter Overzet, and Michael Leone going through our higher stakes teams of Week 5. Always a good time talking through things. We go through, like, it's a fun show, obviously, but there's a lot of like higher level DFS conversation that happens as well. So always enjoy it. If you're here for the first time, we are live every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you guys join us during the week. A bunch of great segments with a bunch of great guests. Definitely where a lot of the value is throughout the week. I know there are a couple people mentioned in the chat that I've seen coming over from TikTok. I would imagine that you might have a totally different feel about my content. So I would argue that you should probably check out the show on Mondays and Thursdays to get a better feel for what I'm all about and what our community is all about. A.J. Brown, Dan Arnold, Aaron Jones, or Devonte Adams, Mike Gesicki, Chase Edmonds. Oh, man. Those are tough, Alonzo, because I don't have any idea what the rest of your lineup looks like. There's Ian. Who do you think will be the highest scoring FanDuel player, regardless of price, regardless of position, ownership? He asks it every single week. It's almost always a quarterback, right? That we talk about this with. Yeah, it's Kyla Murray, my man. Subbing out Cooks for Kirk or Robbie. I prefer Cooks to both those guys. Raiders secondary is really banged up. That's a good point, Rich. Thanks for that. Joe, with all the fantasy hosts out there, you're my man. Total class. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that, man. I would like to be someone that doesn't come to you with all the answers, but likes to just work through it with you guys, right? Anyone that tells you they have all the answers, that's probably something you shouldn't be listening to. Can you get to something you like with Henry and Adams, same lineup? Yeah, we just did it. No worry, Ian. Trevor Lawrence. The Trevor Lawrence stack is interesting. You got to play that like the game's going to pace up, though. So I actually like Derrick Henry on the other side of that one. Easy way to eat the Derrick Henry chalk is to have some interesting pieces from Jacksonville on the other side. What's the best defense? Yeah, we didn't talk about defense a ton. I do really like the Vikings defense on FanDuel specifically, just because I think that they're too cheap for the spot. They're 3,900. We talked a little bit about Philly. They're 3,500. I think they're super cheap against Carolina. Patriots defense, I think it's a really good spot for the Patriots. I think that at some point, Washington is going to get right. Is it this week? I don't know. And they're 3,800, so they're kind of in the middle of the pack. But I think Washington is reasonable. If you can get to the Bucks, like pay up to be contrarian, I love that, just because I think if there's going to be a defense that can kind of get home this week, like we've seen Brissett take a ton of sacks. I just don't know if there's going to be a ton of pass attempts there. So one way to leverage Gesicki and those type of plays, or even like Fournette for that regard, is to play the Tampa Bay defense at lower ownership. I like that. So like New England and Tampa at the top, it's so hard to do on other sites, but on FanDuel, the prices are so close on some of these defenses that I actually don't mind trying to figure out ways to get up to them, especially you get them at super low ownership, and you get the 1 p.m. equity out of that to where you figure it out right away where you're at. So I like that. AZ versus Lance, Washington versus famous Jameis. Yeah, Arizona versus Lance is another great way to probably leverage the field on the slate, man, because I think that Lance is definitely one of the better quarterback plays on the slate from a floor perspective and from a price perspective. But how does it go wrong? The same way it went wrong for Justin Fields against Cleveland, my man. So I like that. James Robinson or Jonathan Taylor? Let's check out their rangefinder for that one, because that's not one I've really thought about a ton, because obviously Taylor not on the main slate. So we got rangefinder. Let's go PPR for this, and we will go Taylor, Robinson. Oh, I just put him on the Bulls. I always do that. I do that like once a day, at least. Robinson, Taylor. Yeah, pretty significantly skewing Robinson's way, my man. Hope that's helpful. See you, Hedgie. Thanks for joining us, my man. Rodgers could be low owned, maybe stack Aaron Jones and Tanyan with leverage. I don't hate that, because maybe you capture. Everyone talks about capturing Rodgers with Devonte, but what about the other way around? Don't hate it. Heavy rain, but sub 10 mile per hour winds in KC. Yeah, we're going to go over the Sunday night football game with Overzet and with Leone on the channel after Tiltspace. So if you guys are playing the Sunday night game, definitely join us for that. Do I like Cobb for Green Bay? He's not really on my radar, but I think there's worse ideas. If you're rolling out a Rodgers stack, that's where it would be for me. I do think that like last week was kind of a perfect storm for Cobb in some ways, just because they sold out completely to shut down Devonte. I just don't know if Rodgers is going to let Devonte go back-to-back without having like a decent game, right? I'd be shocked. What are some of these other decisions we have here? Let's look at two of the Dallas guys. Let's like figure out, let's clear this. CD versus Amari. My inkling here is that the ceiling probably similar, but the median's pretty far away. CD Lamb's still significantly higher ceiling. The floor is just much higher for Amari. So these ones are kind of interesting with teammates as well. Are you worried about Harris with the Pats lineman out? Man, the Patriots offensive line isn't very good anyway. But yeah, it's a concern, man, for sure. Is Swift a good play on FanDuel with non-PPR? Yeah, I think Swift is priced very well on FanDuel regardless of the upside in the passing game. Obviously, he's a better play on a PPR site, but I think he's totally fine on like bringbacks in that game on FanDuel. Yeah. Fournette versus Damien Williams. This will be a good one. literally identical medians, almost identical 90th percentiles, slightly higher floor for Damien. But this is where it comes down to price, right? I think like we've talked about this, but like this is the price tag for Damien Williams is like so far skewed to like the outlier scenario at the floor. Like that's why he's such an easier play than Fournette. It's basically the same play for, and you save $600. Fournette and CD or Saquon and Osborne. Kevin, we don't normally do the 2v2s, but this is probably an easy place that we can do that. You can use this tool for that as well. So let's go Fournette and CD. We should probably do more of these, like 2v2 type of situations. And then what was the other one? Osborne and Saquon. That's kind of off the board, but this would be a good test for this, though. So basically the chalky double versus the more contrarian double. Similar median. Look at the floor for Fournette and CeeDee Lamb. Probably what's taking away a lot of that floor is KJ Osborne, but gives you an idea of what like more of like a middle of the road build means this week versus like a stars and scrubs build. So something to think about. You guys can't see it on the screen, but 90th percentile is about 2 points apart in favor of Fournette and CD. All right, guys, any other final questions here? I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here relatively quickly. Join us on the Tiltspace. Get in the Listener League, fanduel.com/Holka. Let's try and fill that thing up before lock. And obviously, tier 3s, we'll jump on and have some final thoughts here shortly in the Discord. Appreciate everyone that's been here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Toss a like on this video. And join us later on today. And best of luck to everyone in week 5. We'll talk to you guys soon.